I guess the thing I'd like to say to anybody who's wanting to create something or do it, you have to just follow through. You have to don't just talk about it. You have to figure it out, and you have to do it. You have to find a way. You know, whether it's through friends, family, whatever, you've got to find a way to get your vision put together. And you have to, the world needs us. It needs people to try to create things and create new ideas and to do it. And I think people would be surprised how many of them are creators. Actually, there's a big difference living in the world as a creator versus a consumer, you know, and it's not that hard to consume. It's not that hard to critique, but it's very, very difficult to create, you know, and I think more of us have the capability than we think. So my only suggestion is, if you think you have the potential to be a creator, do it. Make stuff. I mean, we'd be a better world if we had more creators and less consumers, you know. Not that there's anything wrong with consuming, but, you know, I think being a creator and a thinker and originator is there's something very special, and I think each of us have the seeds of that in us. Whether it's doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of storytelling. It could be any type of art, or you know, so many different approaches and vocations. But try to create. Try to find a way to make a mark on this world, a positive mark on this world, you know, through your own hand, your own means. That would be my final word.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you guys are. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me on Plunge-Pop on PlungeCast show, Jeffrey Morris, all the way from America. So I'm quite looking forward to this. A fellow sci-fi person, filmmaker, as well as, yeah, I'm looking forward to this because this is going to be interesting from what I've been watching and trying to catch up with Space 1999. Because I remember watching as a kid and then going, what is this? And you know, so yeah, without further ado, Jeffrey, do you want to just tell the folks a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into it? Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm a writer, director, and I do production design as well. I'm very much into plausible sci-fi for the most part. You know, I try to create things that have some sort of basis in physics and science, and that I'm a big science guy. Science aficionado, goes back to childhood for me. And you know, I've got a company called Future Dude Entertainment. The name Future Dude comes from a blog that I used to run that dealt with my adventures. I work a lot with both Hollywood style projects, but I also worked with NASA and science. All walks of life, kind of in the sci-fi, science, those different realms that kind of come together with what I do. And you know, I've done some short films, graphic novels. I've got a big feature in development called Persephone right now that has actors like Ming-Na Wen and Isai Morales attached to it, and done some animation, all kinds of different stuff. So, you know, the main thing is, and I'm also currently developing a documentary about a love of mine since childhood, which is this spaceship right here. It's called the Eagle. It's from a TV series called Space 1999. So, you know, I'm doing a lot of different things, but it's all about sort of telling cool sci-fi stories.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like I said, when I was a kid, I grew up on Star Trek. So that's been my one thing that's consistent in my life.
Yeah.
Amongst all the other, you know, stuff. But when I watched Space 1999, I think I just didn't think the beige suits got me. You know, kind of like, you know, it was like
the costumes.
Yeah, I think it was like, you know,
it's funny. It's so funny. You're the first person I've heard say that. I thought you were going to say, you know, is the moon getting blasted out of the orbit? I couldn't get my head around that. But you're like, it's the suits.
Yeah, because like, I mean, when you look at Star Trek, you got all these colorful suits. You got, you know, even with like Star Wars, you know, even though it's just films at that time when this was coming around, you know, well, when we saw it in New Zealand, right? So when we saw it here, it was right about 80 something, you know, and my dad's English. So, you know, I still didn't get to see it because I think it was more geared towards adults. And I can see why, because it was quite a heavy, you know, science things in it. I mean, I watched, I think I must have watched the first episode maybe a year ago back, trying to get back into older sci-fi. and I still couldn't, get my head into it, and just left it. And then just getting prepared for this, I thought I might as well watch these ships and watch this is about and watch the show. And I could see why myself as a child couldn't get into it,
Absolutely.
and I was thinking,
Yeah.
because it was very, very science orientated, and
Mm.
nuclear war and stuff. That's kind of dreary at that time. But and you weren't meeting all these flashy looking aliens, right?
Yeah,
And,
you're talking about the first season of Space 1999.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, seeing
Yeah.
that as a child would be really daunting. Trying to
Well,
say,
it's weird. I guess the thing is this. It's really interesting that you're bringing this up. I think it's a great conversation. I think Space 1999. Well, first off, it came along in a really interesting time, right? So I was like, I grew up watching the original Star Trek and reruns every day after school, right? That was a big deal. Space 1999, and so I probably started watching Star Trek when I was about 4, 5 years old, something like that.
right. Okay.
Before I'd watched a little Lost in Space. It was too silly for me, a little bit. There were elements I wanted to like about Lost in Space, but it was still a little,
Yeah.
Dr. Smith, anyway, but you got the thing with Space 1999 is it came along right between 2001: A Space Odyssey, the real Apollo missions to the moon, and then Star Wars in 1977, right? So it's like Space 1999 kind of was like dumped right in the middle of all that kind of empty space between the two. And it almost felt to me like someone saw 2001: A Space Odyssey and said, that moon base is really cool. We should tell a story about a moon base. And then someone else said, yeah, but Star Trek's really cool. They're traveling around the galaxy. And so someone was like, well, how do we put those two things together into one idea? So so let's have a moon base, but let's have the moon base traveling around the galaxy. And I can completely understand why for some people they have a really hard time getting their head around that. It's interesting because it's such a weird mix in that it has this very interesting, seemingly plausible concept of a moon base with these buggies and the eagle and all, right? And then you've got this and the idea of even storing nuclear waste up there and all that sort of thing.
That was interesting.
Interesting, right?
Like my head didn't get that as a child.
Yeah.
What were they doing there?
Well, but then they do this then it explodes and the moon is now flying away from the Earth and flying out of the solar system and flying up to other planets and all, and then it is a challenge to kind of and I even as a child, I was like 7, 8 years old when I watched it first run. I will say for me, I dug the seriousness of it and the heaviness of it.
Right.
I was not a typical child though, because I was really into space. I was really into this Apollo program, and I studied that stuff. I knew a lot about it as a small child, right? I mean, I got interested when I was about 3, So seeing Space 1999 for me felt like this extension of the world that we were actually in the early 1970s, right? So in other words, if you said we're in it was made in 73, 74, aired in 75, right? They started in 73. The world they depict 25 years in the future seemed like something that could happen. It's as far as the eagle and the base and all those sorts of things, right?
Right.
And so I think that was what was interesting, intriguing for me. And there was a seriousness to it and heaviness to it that actually, for me as a child, I kind of dug, because I kind of was like, well, if you're going to go up in space, it's kind of serious. There was a vibe. See, Star Wars made space fun. Right. And they did this swashbuckling kind of fun adventure thing. And it was almost going back to the old Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers serials and those kind of things, right? So it was back to that kind of fun of space. And you certainly had but even if you watch like Forbidden Planet, which is some ways the kind of a prototype for Star Trek in a way. Have you seen Forbidden Planet? You should watch it.
I know the name so many times, and I'm sure I've watched it.
Yeah, you got to watch it. It's about this ship that lands on this planet, and there's an ancient civilization there that used to be there, and all. It's a really cool story. But anyway, all I'm saying is that 1999 it's a weird mix, and it's an interesting thing. And I think there were elements in it that got a lot of people thinking and interested, especially kids. And then I think that when they started releasing the toys and model kits of the Eagle and stuff, there are people that became more affixed on that even than Space 1999 as a whole, even though there are people who love Space 1999, and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I used to watch that show to get to see them fly the eagles around. You know.
Yeah, I want to jump back to you as a child and how you grew up now, because that sort of like sets up for us for later on what we're going to talk about with what's coming up with what you've got coming up with Kickstarter. And so guys, if you're watching, just checking the chat, in the chat there's the link to the Kickstarter. You can check out later, so make sure you check that out. But now it's like, let's go on a journey, your journey, how you got to this place, because there's so many things, awesome things you've done. And I mean, I've studied film, so I love the fact seeing a filmmaker and hearing about their journey and all that you've done and stuff. It just excites me because, like you said, you're watching this at 8 years old, or 4 years old. How old are you right now?
I'm 55.
Right, so you're 5 years older than me. So that's what. Yeah.
Okay,
so I'm a 73 born. So that's when these guys.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was born right at the end of 67. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about growing up and what was home life like. I mean, nothing nitty gritty, anything like that. Nothing personal. Just in line with what you're doing with your film.
Sure. It was childhood for me was it was an interesting time. There were a lot of different things going on. It was I'd say in the years kind of leading up to going to school, my mother had before my parents got me and my sister. They were my mother was a librarian, and my father was an aerospace engineer. So we lived in a world where my parents would ask me questions, and they would challenge me, and they'd make me think. It was very much like they didn't baby talk me. They were very, very. They weren't like mean and strict or anything. It was more like they were there to try to inspire me and get me thinking and get me, So that was a big deal. My father, he would bring home model kits or images of things. He brought me home a poster of the space shuttle 10 years before it launched. Right. He worked at this company that had that. So there were all kinds of really cool things that happened with that. And I was very much, I wanted to be an astronaut. That was my dream. And we would go to the library every week. And when I go to the library, I'd check out all the books on science stuff. I always checked out the space books and the NASA books. And I would see these projections of technology. And, NASA used to have a lot of books about here's where we're going. So, so they would show like moon bases and Mars missions and all these things, right? So I read about those things as a child. I'm like, man, that's where we're going. We're going to have space colonies. We're going to have this. I want to be part of that. I want to be in that, So that was a big part of that early childhood. And then I when I went to school, things changed a little bit because suddenly I'm in a situation where there was a lot of, we're just coming out of the civil rights movement, and I lived in an area where it was predominantly white, and there was a lot of racism. I mean, it was crazy, actually. And I think what started to happen to me with all this suddenly, I grew up watching TV shows like Sesame Street, stuff where everybody got along. Then suddenly at school, and like I'm suddenly like running into all this stuff. I'm like, what's going on? And I will say that at that point, science fiction took on a different form for me, because I could watch like the original Star Trek and go, well, I'm facing all this racism right now, but in the future, they're going to fix it. They're going to figure it out. So that gave a sense of hope that like on that bridge, everybody got along. On that bridge, you had all these different types of people and everything. So it told me that there's, and honestly, Space 1999 even meant more because see, Star Trek was 300 years in the future.
This was really close.
This was really close. It was like
I enjoyed watching Carlo, just to interject, but I enjoyed watching Carlo, like just one of the guys. Is like you watch all the different people. There's Russians. I think there's from the accent I'm trying to figure out, and but there was about 2-3 African Americans or people there, and I thought that was really interesting at that time.
You mean in Space 1999?
Yeah.
No, they were. I mean, they were English, but Jerry Anderson, the creator of Space 1999, he and his wife, they really thought that having a sense of diversity was super important, because they were like, in the future we are going to have all kinds of people here, and we are, so they, that was the thing when I watched that show, and you see women having all kinds of dialogue and being in serious capacities. That was, I mean, the co-lead of the series is a woman. So it was like, that was different. That was something really, really powerful. And then you literally would have scenes where you'd have 2 or 3 women and 2 black men in the same shot in 1975. Okay. people don't realize how much that meant. That was a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
So seeing that show gave me a sense of hope that the struggles I was facing as a child, that was going to get worked out and it was going to get better. So.
Yeah, I found like when you talk about racism, like I'm Indian, right? So when I came to New Zealand, I came from a country that was native Fijian. So you had Afro-haired Fijians, and then you had Indians, and then you have but the Indians were also Muslims as well as Hindus.
Okay.
As well as South Asians who have their own religion as well, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, South Asians, like Tamils and stuff like that. But like you only had two different people. But when I came to New Zealand, you had Maoris and you had Pakeha, which is basically Europeans or the indigenous Maoris. Okay. But I found myself as a target of racism because I was the darker skin.
Right.
So because my skin really is dark compared to most Maori people, which is probably like half that darkness. So I became the target of that. So when Roots started showing hair, that really took on a very racist tinge for me, because I was like called Chicken George or Kunta Kinte, stuff like that. So people don't realize that like this is how it works everywhere. You know?
It's human. Like, it's a human problem, and it's something
anybody different, right?
Yeah, it happens for different reasons, different ways, but it is a human problem, you know. And that's one of the things I get really frustrated here in the U.S. is that, you know, people, you know, there's definitely a history of racism. I faced a lot of it myself at times in my life when I was younger. But I mean, at this point, I mean, I feel like we need to move on. We got to get to work. There's stuff to do. You know, we can't be spending our lives dwelling on this stuff. It's like, it's almost like it self-perpetuates at this point, you know. And I just feel like we gotta move on, you know. It's
like if you keep looking for something, it's always there.
It's always there, and it's always there if you look for it. And I don't think the next move is. I don't know if people sometimes realize that they're actually they could be potentially generating what they think. You know what I mean? Right? You know, it's really interesting, and it's something it's a skill I've had to learn in my life of when is it real and when is it not, and when is it my mind, and also at the end of the day, what does it matter, right? It's like people are going to think whatever they're going to think. You know, you know, there people are going to think you're the greatest thing in the world, and people are going to, you know, treat you like you're garbage. It's just it all depends on the person, and at the end of the day, you got to decide who you are and what you're going to go and do and accomplish. You know.
I had a neighbor who was like was going off at me one day, and then I realized I was thinking, is he being racist or is he just being belligerent? Turned out he was just belligerent.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He was just belligerent. Well, that's the thing. Alcohol, belligerent.
Exactly.
It was like everybody.
I don't know that again, there are things that I'm not trying to deny that racism doesn't exist, but I will say that there are things that sometimes people are ascribing to racism. It's just somebody being a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, or you're just disagreeing or whatever it is. You can't just always assume. And again, what does it, for me, it's like, can they stop me from living where I want to live, living the life I want to live, having the job I want to have, doing, if race is getting in the way of that, we've got a problem. But if it's just someone's opinion or someone's view, whatever. Yeah, I got stuff to do. I don't have time to worry about what they think, you know.
People just want to knock you off your stage, let's say.
No matter what. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So let's say after you know, like middle school, junior high, what was it like then? Like, you know, with you being interested in the sciences.
You know, it's interesting. So it was funny because talking about this industry, this started situation. So I wanted to be an astronaut until about the mid 70s and late 70s. And I saw Star Wars, and it was interesting because I know a lot of kids that were just way into Star Wars, really into the action figures and the story. You know, for me, Star Wars was about how did they make that film, right? It's like I was blown away watching Star Wars, going, man, for 2 hours I believed this. How did they do that? You know, and then I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if all those NASA stories that I've seen that don't seem to be happening, right? I started seeing NASA was like, you know, suddenly we got this space shuttle and we're not going to Mars and we're doing it. Like all the cool stuff was suddenly starting to not happen. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And the public was losing interest and it was all waning. I started thinking, man, someone needs to start making some movies using this technology in Star Wars, but do it to tell realistic stories. Like, why can't we tell a story about people living on Mars or traveling out in the solar system, stuff like that? That's when I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker. and I started on that when I was like in middle school, and I started learning how to. I got some of the Star Wars books and taught myself how to draw spaceships and design spaceships, and studying guys like Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston and Sid Mead, all those kind of designers. I learned a lot about filmmaking. I started making my own little Super 8 movies. And
so this would be about mid 1970s.
This is early 80s. That this is when for me, that's when I kind of started between 11 and 14. I started trying to make my own little movies and doing stuff along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be like having parents like, of that caliber, like intelligence and with jobs like that. It must be. I mean, just an interesting. Like I know a lot. I mean, I look at a lot of parents like because I come in contact with a lot of different people. Not every parent would be that encouraging of the kids.
Oh no, not at all. No,
I find that like
not at all. No, and while my parents, I wouldn't say they were perfect. No one's perfect, right? I will say they certainly tried, and they certainly did everything they could to try to create an environment where I was empowered to be able to go forward and do something. And I don't think a lot of people realize the impact. There's all these people just kind of have kids, and I don't know if they realize the magnitude and importance of what a parent is, what the responsibility of a parent is in terms of really providing a roadmap and a path forward for their child. That's super, super important, and I'm very thankful to my parents for that. They both passed on, but they were definitely a positive influence on me, and definitely part of the core of what allowed me to move forward.
I think, I mean, those early building blocks, I mean, to see your parents actually talking to you and engaging with you on kind of like on a adult to adult level,
my parents never talked down to me. They never talked, they never talked to me like I was a child. They talked to me like, we're just talking, right? Yeah. And they never like underestimated my intelligence. And I think that's so like it's something I don't think a lot of people understand. Like if you have a baby and you baby talk, you go, would you do, right? Okay. That baby is looking to that parent like, what are you, you're here to teach me. You're here to show me. And if someone puts gibberish out, that's delaying you. That's delaying the process. You see what I'm saying? That baby's mind is like I saw this woman the other day just talking to her child saying, "You want to go bye-bye? Want to go bye-bye?" Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Right? What does that mean? If you're and I don't, again, nothing against that. It's just that I don't think people realize like there's a responsibility here. I think we can get into this later, but the point is for me is that I feel like we are in big trouble as a civilization right now because we're losing our ability to critically think. And we, critical thinking is waning. I feel almost like the intellectual trajectory of humanity kind of hit its peak, and it feels like we're descending. And this all starts with how parents raise their kids or how they communicate with their kids.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's such a huge deal, and it's such a big responsibility. And it's something like with my two sons, I took really seriously with them, raising them. So
it is important. That's why it's like I'm saying that, because I think I mean, I look at myself and I look at my friend who was like, we sort of like, I think the two of us, even though we have similar sort of interests, you're more of like what I'd consider a nerd, right? And the intelligent about space and stuff like that, where you want to research that. Me, I'm like, I want to enjoy that, because I'm a geek. And so I found that out later in life what the differences were, because I thought we were the same. But then I realized my brain doesn't work that way.
It's really funny because, and I know it's something that's not a popular opinion at this point, but I actually don't even like ascribing to either of those terms, nerd or geek. And I'll tell you why. Because both of those terms, when I was growing up, were disparaging, very disparaging terms, right? Yeah. And they're disparaging. It's almost like people used to call gay people queer, right? And things like that, right? Yeah. And then people now have like taken on queer and they're proud of being queer and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's some folks who use the same thing with the N-word and stuff like that. My problem is, I feel like I'm gonna drive this home. I think that there's an anti-intellectualism which connects to what I was saying 100%. Before about 100%. Reasoning, right? So when I go back to look at the 1970s when I was growing up, and I think about how being smart, I started seeing it as being something that kids started looking down on each other for. Like they would look down on someone for being smart. They looked at, now I understand that they're like arrogant smart people who are like, well, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you because I'm smart. I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just like, hey, I just like to read books, or I like to draw things, or I like to think about things, or I like to, you know, right? I mean, the idea that that's getting put down. So here's my point. My point is that I've seen so many people who are just, I will tell people, they'll go, you're kind of a geek. I'm like, no, I'm just a smart, creative guy. That'll be my term back, because I don't have to ascribe, other than I don't need a term for it, because to me, it's what we should be doing. I applaud people like yourself for, you know, wanting to think and wanting to read, you know what I mean? That's important. And it's like, last thing I'll say is like, I notice people saying things like, they go, yeah, I'm a nerd. Right? You'll say, man, you really know a lot about this subject, and they'll go, yeah, I'm kind of a nerd. And now think about that. When they say it, they say it almost like they're self-deprecating, right? I think that that's a social construct, that it's part of this thread of anti-intellectualism that's going on in our society. Could you imagine if we lived in a world where like we were encouraging and excited about people being intelligent, and excited about people reasoning? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm saying as a culture, you know.
I think we almost got there. There was a point we almost got there. I think with when an internet hit. I remember when you were saying that, I was like, the reason I said that was because when I was a kid, you know, all the regular kind of whatever would point out, those are nerds. You know, you don't want to be like them. And I'll be like, but those are my friends.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The mainstream kids.
And one of my friends,
the mainstream kids treated us like it was like that wasn't something that was like a positive thing to be a nerd or a geek, right? It was like something that was like negative. Now I understand people feel like we've reclaimed that, we've grabbed that back, and we're not letting them put us down. Good, that's great. But I'm still not going to sit here and say there's something wrong with me being a smart guy. You know what I mean? Or that I have to suddenly have a label for it. You know? Yeah. That's all.
I think, I mean, like, if I want to know something, I always go to the smart person in the room.
Right.
Right. The person who knows about the subject.
And I think that's something, I love being around people who are smarter than me, because that means that I'm learning something. If I'm always the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. You know, I need to learn, and I want to learn, and it's important. You know, it's really, really important. So, you know, I just think that we shouldn't be, again, it's interesting, because I know people who can tell you any sports statistic in the world, right?
Yeah.
But that's totally cool. That's totally cool. It's not nerdy or geeky to know all these sports statistics and all, you know what I mean, right? You know, but if you know something about, you know, geology or you know, suddenly you're a geek. You know, you know, you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, you know, we come from a like, New Zealand's very well known for rugby and sports, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, we weren't like, there's no such thing as jocks in New Zealand, right? And but there is jocks in New Zealand. You know, so you got the sports. So you got the parents will always like, you know, the male parent will always like be supportive of you doing sports, but not you being smart, not you not studying hard. But what I did notice was that a lot of the European parents would support their European kids in getting smart. However, the non-European parents would support their kids getting into sports and music. I came face to face with this a couple years ago, about 2019. Prefects. There was a scholarship thing for prefects, and I noticed that the Indians, Asians, and the Europeans in the room were going towards doctorates, the sciences, you know, like some engineering sort of things. However, the Polynesians and the Maoris were going towards music and arts, music and sports. You know, I want to go to sports thing and this, and I want to go to music school for this. And I was like, later on, I posted online that's what I just ran into. Like in a room full of about 30, you know, year 12, year 11, whatever. I think it's about just before, before college, I think it is for you guys.
Mhm.
You know, so this is like junior high. And I said that, and it's, you know, somebody said, "Oh, that's because that's what they're geared towards." It's like, but that's really not good,
Right.
because you know, if you have a whole society, you know, culture that's geared towards, and this is Polynesian people, right?
Mhm.
Geared towards just the arts and um, sports. What you're going to have is that's the only thing they'll look for
Right.
excelling at,
Well, and then
right?
who's going to be in charge of the economic situation then, right?
Yeah.
And so
And
then
then they
then
will
people will
always
sit
complain
there,
about those guys not making it.
people
Yeah.
will do the thing of like going, well, those folks are always in charge and they're in charge. It's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, how many of us are trying to work to go be in charge as well? That's what I always get back to. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's very interesting because I see the same kind of thing happen in the United States where, you know, when I grew up, let's go back to that. You know, so when I was a small child, kind of up until junior high, I was like one of the only kids of color, right? Okay. And I went through a form of racism with that. But then suddenly we moved to a different part of the United States. And next thing I know, I'm and you've got like 30% of the kids were black. And I was like, this is gonna be great. Well, it didn't work out like that. It turned out to actually be that then the black kids turned on me because they were like, you act like you're white. They would accuse me of being white. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It's like, did you guys know what I just came from? I'm like, I'm just a person, right? And so it was very disillusioning for me to go through racism for whites to then go through sort of racial stereotyping with blacks. And this assumption that like, as a black person, we do this, and this. I'm like, well, I don't do any of those things, but this is my skin and I'm not trying to be white. I'm just trying to be a smart guy. You know, I'm just trying to, so it took me a lot of years to kind of work through all that and go, you know what? Y'all can do whatever you're going to do. You guys want to be this and you guys want to be that. You go ahead and do that. I'm just going to be over here just being a person. I'm a human being and I want to be around other humans who are all doing their best. I don't care what race they are. I don't care whether, you know, male or female. I care about who are you and are you trying and doing your best? You know, and are you bringing more good to the world than you're, you know what I mean? Than you're taking from. That's what I want to deal with, because this race stuff, that's just melanin, you know, right? You know, or culture or you know what I mean? Literally like a cultural thing, where there's no genetic thing making somebody speak a certain way or to have certain interests. It's not genetic, it's cultural.
Yeah. You know? We talk about that. Like, so they did a movie called, I think it was Catwoman or something, animated movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
They took people who spoke, no specific accents and gave them accents in the movie, and I was like, why? So basically it was like giving a Chinese person, an actor who was Chinese or Asian, who had to put on an accent, a Japanese accent,
right?
And I'm like, you know, it's like it kind of diminishes. You know, I don't know. I thought we were supposed to get, you know, together more and not ignore those.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, I think the whole idea. Look, it's like, it's interesting to me because I look at myself as being part of a human. Well, here's the thing: greater sense. If you back way out and you're looking at the Earth from afar, this is a very fragile, very tiny little element of the universe, right? It's like a speck on 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 a speck. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's nothing, right? And yet it's everything for us, right? And here we are living on this planet, and the idea that we would be sitting, I can completely understand how in the past we had we came from different parts. We, you know, obviously we evolved in the same area, but then we split up and we go in different places, and then we, you know, evolved different cultures and languages and all these things. Then you come back together and you're like, whoa, who are you? You know, right? And there's all this. I completely understand how that happens, but at a certain point, it feels like we as a human civilization, we need to grow up. You know, and part of growing up is to say, yes, you know, we have different religions and different politics and different, you know, cultures. We have different, you know, melanin levels and eye shapes and skin, you know, hair textures and stuff. But at the end of the day, we're humans, and we're all within, from a DNA standpoint, within a few points of the same, right? So it's sort of like we need to be focusing on what unites us and get together and work together to make a better world and actually become a better part of this universe, right? That's what I would be doing as a species, you know?
we would succeed at so much.
Oh, I know.
You know,
It'd be a different
like,
world. It'd be a completely different
yeah,
world. You know, and I often think about, like, I fantasize with the idea of, like, what would it be like to, you know, start a school where the beginning, you know, starting in school, it's not this idea of indoctrinating about any of these sort of cultural patterns and all these things that we've been, but more like talking about science and the universe, and, you know, inspiring critical and creative thinking and capacities. And that's what you do with children from the beginning, right? And you're inspiring them to become citizens of the universe, as opposed to, you know what I mean? These limiting little buckets we create, you know?
I kind of feel like, for me, and like, you know, mid 80s was like that for us in school here. But then also, you know, you always had that division, like I was mentioning, how, you know, rather than teacher going, you know, those guys, to get ahead in life, you should be smart, you know, because that's going to be a long life. It's like, if you can play sports for so many years, what happens to you when you get hurt? You know, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Teaching people about.
And by the way, I've always been an athletic person, right? I am
Same.
athletic, and you know, I'm not against athletics, and nor do I think that athletes are dumb. I don't. It requires quite a bit of intelligence to be good and excel at athletics. I'm not saying that, but there is a big difference between. See, I think I think athletics should just be part of being a well-rounded human being, right? Is that right?
Because it's healthy,
right? It's just because I think there are plenty of smart people who neglect that, who don't work out and who don't take care of them. You know what I mean? There's like it's like they live too much in here instead of taking care of it all. So to me, it's all about balance. So when I talk about an intellectual society, they're also physically fit. They also are encouraged to take their health seriously, you know, and to support each other in the environment. That's all part of it too, you know. So I just want to say, I don't want to make it come across like I'm anti-sport or anti-athletics. It's more, what I do think is a problem is the place that it has in our society, right?
Yeah,
it's
100%,
right. And I would align. I even have to align. And as somebody, and it's funny to say this as someone who creates entertainment, but I still feel like what we're doing with entertainment and sports, really, in terms of, you know, it is a form of entertainment, whether people know it or not, right? When we're watching sports, it's like we put entertainment on such a pedestal. And it's like we don't realize, you know, whereas I think it should be part of our lives, but I would rather that we put our intellect and our growth and all that stuff higher, you know, than being entertained. You know, that I think we'd have a different society, you know.
Well, I used to play sports since I was a kid, like from like soccer, rugby, volleyball, you know, badminton, anything I could do, you know, I would do it, you know. Rock climbing, everything, and but I had to stop there because I had a car accident. But I just enjoy watching people do that, because I mean, like, you know, you're talking about health and eating and stuff. Because I watch, you know, I'm a huge fan of wrestling, but I read more about wrestlers now and about their lives now than I do the actual wrestling matches they have. And so somebody, one of the young ladies was talking about on the you know, they did the news about her, and she's saying, you know, I'm supposed to look after my body, I know that, but come 11 o'clock at night, I just want to binge out, and you know, and I want to have a bit of ice cream, and you know, and so I think, you know, there is a lot of intelligence there, and it's not diminishing that, but like, I think we just put the focus differently when it comes to sports, and we aspire greatness to sports rather than greatness to intelligence and about business and learning of those side of things. But yeah, I think just, you know,
well, and again, it's not just that. I think we're putting a lot of again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm a fan of things, right? Okay, but it's just that I try to balance it. It's like that shouldn't preclude me from reading a book or working out. You know what I mean? It's like I can be a fan and I can also do these other things, and it's about being balanced. That's what I think humans are missing right now, right? We get so skewed in one way or the other. We get way too far in one direction, where it's like, how about we find a middle where we can play around with all of it a little bit, you know, and learn and grow and evolve. So,
well, that gives me a good segue into middle school.
Yeah.
So, what was that like?
Middle school for me was probably the most frustrating aspect of my life at this point. I think middle school to high school,
Mm.
so the ages kind of like 13 through,
It's teenage years.
17, 18. Yeah, those years,
Yeah.
because, that was, again, as I was telling you earlier, it was very disillusioning. And I felt
Mm.
like there was so much of this,
Mm.
anti-intellectual bent with the
Mm.
young people. And there's so much, all these cliques. They would, this group would hang out with that group, would hang out with this group, would hang out
Yeah.
with, and I was always like, gosh, I mean, why can't I be friends with someone over there? Or why can't I be friends with, well, I like that guy. Well, you can't be friends with that guy if you're in this group, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And those divisions were very, frustrating and disillusioning for me.
Yeah.
That's the negative side. But the positive side is it was the 80s, and it was a
Mm.
time period where there's never been anything like it in terms of film.
Mm.
We had things like, I think about like years like 82, and, with all the cool movies that came out in 82,
Yeah.
right? And, stuff like Tron and
Oh gosh.
Star Trek
Yeah.
2 and, and all,
Yeah.
Blade Runner and all this stuff. It was amazing.
Oh, dude.
It was an amazing time.
My number one film in the entire world. Nobody will ever say that's not the best. It's like Blade Runner is my number one. I started actually reading sci-fi because of Flip K. Dick,
Mhm.
and really getting into it because of that. I think, yeah, but you're right. Like, the 80s were amazing for film.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of there was media there that made me feel a lot. That was where I started. That was my survival. It was these great movies, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of music that I really liked in the 80s. I kind of got in really heavy into new wave music and stuff, and there were all these bands I really liked, by the time I got to college, bands like New Order, Depeche Mode,
Yeah.
Cure, all that kind of stuff. So that stuff was really like I started feeling less alone, because I was like, well, these people see the world kind of similar to I do.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot, and everything. But yeah, it was a really interesting time, and it's certainly not a time I'd want to repeat. It was one of those time periods that I almost was like, can I make it through this? It was very, very frustrating time period. But yeah.
Yeah, like the teenage years is like, it seems to be the year you're already going through puberty and stuff, and girls and all that, and on top of that, you're trying to choose what you're about. I think at that point is when you're trying to really define yourself. Of course, you don't until a little bit later, but I mean, and then you've got all the peer pressure and stuff like that on top that makes it really hard. I find, like, I really feel sorry for kids at that age. I mean, as an older person now.
Well, and I think, when I look at them nowadays, it's like it's incomprehensible, because they're dealing now with all the pressures of social media, and and all the body image stuff, and all the all the TikTok and Instagram and all this, I mean, I don't even think we can even conceive of what it was to be like for them, and it's just I don't think so. Social media has not brought out the best in humanity, unfortunately. I mean, look, I mean, it's fantastic that you and I can do something like what we're doing right now. That's wonderful, right? And I don't want to put down the idea that the technology, it's good that it exists in a way, but I think that the way it's being exploited and used, it's damaging us in a lot of ways too. So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, those are tough years, and so I will say that I got a lot of inspiration for, in a positive sense. They were also my formative years. There were such interesting times in the positive sense, right? There's so much stuff that I learned. And I think, again, I don't think there's ever been an era like that period between 77 and 83, 84 with movies. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many there's just never been anything like that. It was so interesting and creative, and really, really, there's so many movies. I just go on and on about it.
Like Terminator came out that time as well.
Yeah, Terminator was around that time.
Yeah.
I think that was 84. But Terminator, you had Aliens in 86, which
that's what I was just wondering when it came out.
That's one of the best, movies ever made, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
you know, it's just an era like no other, you know, and I just don't think that the 90s couldn't hold a candle to it. Not that there weren't a couple of decent movies in the 90s, but it was just like interesting movie after interesting movie back then, you know? Yeah.
I mean, there was, oh gosh, I remember Lady Hawk coming around about maybe just a bit later. But there was also fantasy as well. Like, so you had science fiction movies as well as fantasy movies. That was like, you know, but then kind of like, I think about late 80s is when like the whole action movies took off.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, it's kind of,
names.
I think it's sort of like Die Hard, you know, like that was 88, right?
Yeah.
And which was fantastic. But you know, that was when that started kicking in, you know, and then it became the action movie thing, right? I mean, you obviously had the, you know, the Stallone, like, you know, First Blood kind of stuff and everything, but it was, you know, but it really became a thing by the 90s. You know, it's just, it was, and you know, I kind of feel like by 1990, like it was, I think The Hunt for Red October, which was, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
I have.
Yeah, I love that movie. You know, 89, you had The Abyss, and 90 you had Hunt for Red October. For me, that was my era ended then of the movies that I love, right? The movies that I was like, wow. Now, again, I'm not going to say that in the 30 plus years since then, there haven't been movies I liked, but the movies that I truly think redefined the medium, you know, and you're right, both in sci-fi and fantasy, there were movies like Dragon Slayer and, you know, all kinds of cool stuff.
Beastmaster, gosh.
Kroll.
Yeah. Kroll. Gosh, there was so many amazing stuff, because I used to be like in that time, like between about 87 maybe 86 till about 93 is when I had my own money, right? Because I was work and stuff, so I'd get like, it was like about 10 for $5 a week VHS. And so I would just go and, you know, go to work, go get, you know, 10, and then go home, watch, because I had my own video player in my room, because I was renting at this time, boarding, whatever. And so I would just watch, go to sleep, watch, go to sleep, and then go back and go to get the next lot. So I basically emptied out the entire store within, you know, 4 years or something, of all genres. That's what got me into love, you know, film.
That's great.
But I think, I mean, everything, you know, with CGI, that's one thing that really I want to talk about afterwards with, you know, But so middle school, college?
You know, college, that's when I really started getting heavy into film. And I also studied political science, which is something that I cared a lot about. I've always been reasonably political. You know, you know, I mean, I guess it's just kind of part of being a human to me, or being part of a civilization, is that you pay attention to these things. And you know, I was going back to childhood. It's like, just like I paid attention to the space program and stuff like that. You know, I was aware of Vietnam War, or, you know, Nixon's situation that happened. There are all kinds of fascinating things that happened in the world of politics in the 1970s as well. And I was a little kid, but I still knew about it. And I still paid attention. I would talk to my parents about it. So I've always had that political angle to me. So that became part of college for me. And I think that was when I really started coming in my own. I really started, you know, finding my own look and feel. And, you know, I grew my hair long, and, you know, you know, I was a different guy then. You know, I kind of became doing my thing. That's when I started figuring out and doing my own thing. And it was like, I wasn't under my parents anymore. You know, my parents, was interesting. My parents didn't want me to be a filmmaker. They actually wanted me to go down a path of something like engineering or architecture, or something more, you know, more of a discipline. Get in there, do something you can make good money, you know. And I wanted to make movies because I thought about being an architect. I actually almost went to college to be an architect. And then I also considered being a commercial pilot. That's another angle I thought, right? But I decided that making movies let me do everything. Like, I could design a house, I could design buildings, I could design stuff, create worlds. I could pretend to be a pilot. I could do anything I wanted making movies. I started thinking, like, if this was all, because, you know, part of it was like, I looked into being an architect, and I was like, well, okay, can I design cool futuristic buildings? It's like, well, not really. I mean, most architects, like, you know, we figure out we're designing a bank, and there's just the way banks look, and we just want to make sure that the bank looks like a bank, you know. And so you might be able to make it a little interesting, but you know what I mean. What it wasn't going to be like, you know, I'm not going to be like
it's the mold. There's a mold, and you can't really create too much of the mold.
I wasn't going to be like Hadid, you know, doing these massive, amazing, you know what I mean? It's like, maybe I could, but it's not, the odds were, now I can do whatever I want, right? I can design all kinds of stuff because I'm in the world of creativity and movies. So, so I think when I pursued going down the path of film, it took my parents a few years to get into it. But once I got out of college and I started my own business, I moved to here where I live in Minnesota. Which I don't know if you've been over the U.S., but it's in the central part. Okay, so as far as the U.S. is concerned, we're kind of in the middle, what's called the Midwest, and I'm in the north part of the Midwest. So, so during the winter, it can get very cold here at times, and a lot of snow and things like that. And but then it actually gets pretty warm during the summer as well. So that's the thing. So I'm in the, you know, so I'm based in the Midwest, and which also was interesting because I kind of had a choice between going to California, which is where Hollywood and all the film stuff is. But there was a lot at the time, you know, the musician Prince, he's from here. And and so Prince, and then there were movies being made, all kinds of stuff. And I wanted to be part of that. So after college, I came up here and I decided to become part of that. And I did eventually become part of it. I ended up working with Prince some and doing stuff. And I directed commercials and music videos and that kind of thing. So that became kind of the basis of me launching my career, you know. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So, well, let's hit up Prince for a bit. Like, is this after doing commercials and stuff, or was it like doing short films and then on to that?
The Prince stuff is funny. It was kind of almost early on because I, you know, I was, again, I was much more part of that whole thing. I used to do dance choreography and I DJ'd, and these are kind of my things I did to make a living while I was trying to figure out my film career. And I actually ended up, I was more of I had to decide actually about 1990, I had to make a decision. Do I want to be a musician or do I want to be a filmmaker and business guy? And I eventually decided to become a filmmaker and business guy because, again, I just felt like there was much more of a basis and a possibility for having stability and a future to that. Whereas musicians, it's kind of like anything. You get a certain number of years. And I mean, there are some musicians that obviously pull it off and do it for a lifetime, but it's a challenging industry, and look at where it is now. I mean, it's you know, and so, you know, I was doing stuff in front of the camera with kind of the Prince entourage and things like that. And then it was during that period that I decided that I wanted to for sure be behind the camera. So, yeah, so that's when I went from there. And then I started working on music videos and stuff like that. And and commercials. So I went from there. So then getting into film, that kind of happened later on. You know, later in the 90s for me, you know. Yeah, go ahead.
How'd you get, how'd you go from, like, what was this transition from coming out of college and then going into setting up towards, you know, into film? So did you start with commercials? How did you set yourself up? Or did you work with somebody else?
You know, so the first thing I did actually was graphic design because I wanted to make sure I could make a living. So I did a lot of, I would do things like design business cards and menus and letterheads, things like that. But it was stuff that kind of kept the lights on, right? And then at night I would DJ at clubs. And so all that was a way to kind of make some money. And I knew I wanted to direct movies, and I knew I wanted to go, but I was like, it never made sense to me that it was like, so I would see people in LA, and the problem with Los Angeles is like, it's saturated with thousands and thousands of dreamers, people who like want to be actors, want to be filmmakers, want to be and some of them pull it off, but it's a really small, and you're really fighting for the oxygen in that kind of environment when there's so many people there, right? And I knew I wanted to have a shot. So being in Minnesota, part of what happened for me is I started focusing more on learning how to be an entrepreneur, because I figured if I learned how to do business, I would have a basis to do anything. So I started learning how to, I worked with this grad student program at this university near me. And I was actually working with their grad students, and they helped me write my first business plan. So then I learned how to write business plans, and then I started raising private equity. I got people
Right.
money to my company, which got me started. You see what I'm saying? That's how I got off the ground, is doing it like that. So that was a really cool way to, it's sort of like that, you know, teach yourself to fish thing. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, and so
Exactly.
that was what kind of allowed me to start, because I figured if I learned how to do business, I could sustain this long enough, because the odds are against you when you're trying to make movies and you're trying to create stuff like this. This is just hard to do. You know, it costs a lot of money, and it's also very hard in the sci-fi genre, because, you know, obviously with most sci-fi, you're creating the elements, like you're designing things, building new worlds. You have costumes and sets and props and visual effects, and that's expensive. You know, it's different than just making a movie about a relationship where you could shoot it in an apartment. You know, right? It's like,
you don't really need that money. You know,
you don't need a lot of money to just go find an apartment somewhere, right? So you know, so that's what I did in the early 1990s, was really focus on learning how to run and do business, create businesses, and that sort of thing. And about then was when I really started getting respect from my father for being, because he started realizing that how hard I was working, and that I was actually working at it from a business angle, as opposed to being some dreamer creative guy, you know. So yeah,
I think that's something that's really lacking in the arts, like the idea to actually learn business.
yes.
And I think that's why a lot of people, you know, kind of end up either destitute or being ripped off in the arts, because, you know, they kind of like, I've always like kind of like, I remember I mentioned this before, but like to in previous, but like the difference between being an artist and being a poor artist, you know, is not knowing business.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the things that I always thought about is, like, I would run into people who were artists, and they're doing stuff in their basement, and I was like, well, I don't want to just do stuff for me and my friends and family. It's like, I can't make a living. How do you make a living off of that? Number one. And then number two, you want to get it out to mass audiences. You want it to be a success. You want it to be, you know, so to me, the conduit between having a good idea and getting it to a mass audience is understanding the business element. And I couldn't agree more. I think that a lot of times it's the same thing. If you look at like a lot of sports players, right? They'll suddenly get a big contract, and then they blow all the money, right? Because they don't know how to do business. No one taught them, here's what you do, here's how you handle that money, here's how you manage this, here's what you know. And so for me, being an entrepreneur became a foundation for being able to actually create art. And the point to me is, for me personally, the reason behind creating the art is that it can have some sort of potential commercial impact. Otherwise, what am I, you know, I can do art for myself, sure, but you know, you want it to succeed, you want it to go forward. That's the point, you know.
Yeah, I think if you're not able to make money off your art, then you can't make more art.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't seem to understand, is like, sure, you can write a song, but if you can't make that song work over and over again and put money in your bank account to keep you fed, you know, it's this this idea, it's like something joyful, or just something amazing to be poor and to be an artist. I just don't understand. And yeah,
well, I also think that a lot of those folks who are in that situation, they're relying a lot on other people at that point, right? And I've never been a guy who wants to do that. You know, it's like I'm all for opportunity, and I'm all for collaborating. And hey, I've had so many people who've been willing to help me along the years. I couldn't over the years, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the generosity and support of so many different people to help me do this. And they still are, but I also still try to pay that back and you know, pay it forward to other people as well. But to me, again, it's like, the one thing any of these people could see when they look at me is, he's trying to do this. He's trying to build a foundation. And I have employed lots of people over the years. I have been able to provide a living for others through the fact that I built an infrastructure around my art. I'm very proud of that. You know, it still isn't just about me. It's about the fact that I've been able to enable others as well.
And there is that thing, like enabling, you're not like just, and a lot of time that comes through actually doing stuff. I find that, like, if you're enabling people, people see that and then they buy into that and they support you even more
Right.
because they see you setting up something for somebody else. So when I look at your films, I'm going, man, that's got so many awesome people in it. I want, and then you look at the animation of Parallel Man, and I go, wait, there's so many people creating that, that animation and stuff.
Well, the interesting story with Parallel Man, actually, I went and I worked with there's a college here, the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. They call it MCAD. And I actually, back in like 2006 or so, I had a bunch of 5 and 6, I had interns who did their senior project with me. Well, some of those guys who did the senior project with me, I'm still working with them now 16, 17 years later. So what happened was when I did Parallel Man, I actually put together an in-house team that was based upon a lot of those college students that I worked with.
Awesome.
And we all came together, and that people were like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, we did that because I pulled together some super creative young people and we all worked together. A lot of us, we were doing this thing virtually years before COVID. We did that with people in different parts of the country and the whole thing. We pulled it off. It turned out great. So you get it. It's like, it's just, you have to be willing to pay these things forward and work with people and collaborate. And, but at the end of the day, it has to have some sort of an infrastructure, and that infrastructure begins with business. That's the point. Yeah. And if you don't figure that out, sure, there are people who get lucky, and then they get lucky and they made something and somebody jumps in and says, this is great. But all I know is if you aren't lucky, the only way to get there is if you work hard and you have an infrastructure that makes sense. Yeah.
Or if you've got really rich parents, who are willing to,
well, and I'm going to put that on luck. You're lucky enough to be born
into it. Yeah.
And it's funny because like my father always said to me, he's like, man, I wish I had been wealthy enough to support you to just go do your ideas. I've often said, man, if I had millions of dollars, I'd be a billionaire right now because of how hard me and my team work, and I look at all this garbage being made, and I'm not saying, hey, I'm making better stuff than everyone else. That's not my point. It's just that I know there are a lot of very talented filmmakers out there who, and artists and writers and musicians, and they just need a shot. They just need somebody to say, this person's got some talent, give them a shot. And a lot of people who are getting there and getting a shot, some of them are getting it just because they knew the right person, or like you said, they had rich parents, or they, some reason that's leading them to do this. And it's like, man, it's very frustrating because then you see what they create and you're like, okay, you just took an opportunity that many of us would do anything to have, and you made that. It's really, really something to see, So.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought, like, if I was born rich, but then I was like, where would I be though? Would I squander that? I mean, I've squandered a lot of my youth,
another point, right? Yeah, you don't really know, like I could sit here and second guess and say, well, if I had only this, I could have that. It's like, it is what it is. In some ways, this has been a hard road, but I kind of feel like it's finally starting to. It's really weird. Going back to Space 1999, it's really interesting because when I really think about this journey, I actually think my journey to become a filmmaker began with me sitting in the living room at 7 watching Space 1999. And then to sit here now and be making a documentary about Space 1999 and working with these actors and meeting, I just got to meet Barbara Bain, the co-star of that show, last week in Los Angeles, and to sit down with her and have lunch with her. And we really connected. It was amazing conversation. I never in a million years would have thought that 50 years, almost 50 years later, would be watching this stuff and being part of this and sort of becoming a voice for this. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It's been fascinating, and it's I'm still getting my head around it. Yeah,
it's kind of like synergy. You're chasing your childhood dream without even realizing you've been chasing it.
Yeah,
because I think that's a difference between having supportive parents and not having supporting parents as well. Because if you're watching that and your parent goes, well, go outside and play, what are you doing inside watching this? There is that also. I think there is that balance, but I think you're right, we can't second guess but also there's an opportunity. It's taking opportunities. You know, if you
Right.
decide to take the opportunity or not. And I think a lot of times we just maybe get scared off taking the opportunity. You know,
Hmm.
what if you decide, well, you know, oh, that's that. I won't talk to her. You know, I won't talk to her because she won't even want to talk to me or something like that, and then decide not to talk to them. And next thing you're not talking to them, you know,
Hmm.
and now you don't have, you know, talking to Barbara, you know,
Hmm.
or meeting up for talking about Space
Hmm.
99.
Hmm.
But I think, you know, all the little journeys and choices we make, you know, bring us to where we are.
Hmm.
But then also there's some missed opportunities that we don't take as
Oh, of
well.
course. Yeah. No, no, no. I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's like,
Mm.
what would you do if you could go back?
Yeah,
But then where would you end up? I mean,
yeah,
there's nothing, the thing, all I can do is just try to be learn and be the best you can in whatever
yeah.
moment and situation you're in. That's all you can do,
It's a, what is it, road to less traveled or least traveled? You
Yeah.
know,
The road
because
less
sometimes
traveled.
we just want, yeah, sometimes you just want to take the easy road. But you know, when you have some, you know, when you're brought up with supportive parents, you're determined to succeed or determined to, you know, go further and further than just giving up or turning to, you know, alcohol or turning to drugs. But when when you have that support, you kind of like, here's where I want to go, and this is my direction I'm going to choose. Even with, you know, with I guess some of the things you've faced in your life, you've still decided this is the road I'm going to stick with.
Right. I'm going to stick
So
with it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so let's talk about some of the short films that you've made, and then we'll go on to the other ones. I mean, I've watched Peril Man, and I've watched
Oceanus.
Oceanus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which came first?
We made them simultaneously. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It was two
yeah.
teams.
So I wasn't wrong to say which one.
I had an animation team and a
Oh,
live action team, and we actually did them simultaneously. That's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life, is doing those at the same time. So yeah.
I saw Oceanus first, and it
Hmm.
was on Dust, and I only recently just started going back to watching Dust because I've been watching it for a while, and then um, but then I got busy running stuff, and then, you know, I saw it, and then I was like, I might as well talk to this guy, see if he wants to come on, you know, because I find this really interesting. Then I saw the other one, I was like, yeah, this is even awesome, you know. And then I was like, oh wait, there was, you know, I think it might have come across on Dust, but I think Observations, you know, I had Robert on, and he mentioned, but I never actually saw the interview, so I didn't know nothing else apart from the fact it was on, you know, you were making a documentary and so on. But how long have you been writing? You know,
Oh, it's
and
interesting. You mean like screenwriting?
yeah,
The
or
first
just
script
did you start writing stories first, or did you go to screenwriting first?
no, I started writing stories first. I mean, I think it goes all the way back to like first big story. I mean, I used to dabble with storytelling even as a child, but I think it was like high school. I was tremendously worried about nuclear war as a child, as a teenager,
Right.
right? Because the United States and Soviet Union had all these missiles.
Yeah.
You had leaders that were posturing against each other, and sort of,
Mm.
Reagan, and I don't know. I just really thought there was a good possibility that we would have a nuclear war. I was very worried about it. I remember writing a story about, I used to be an avid cyclist. I still like to ride my bike, but I used to ride my bike back when I was in, high school.
Mm.
And I wrote this story about guys being out on a bike race, like one of those multi-mile kind of 100-mile bike races. And suddenly a nuclear attack happens. And
Right.
it's about this guy who's just riding his bike, and suddenly a bomb goes off over there, and
Yeah.
he's like out in the middle of nowhere, and he's trying to figure out what is he going to do. And
Mm.
he's walking after, and he's lost his bike and all this stuff. And I wrote this story. I think I was like a sophomore in high school, and my
Mm.
teacher was like, "Are you okay?" when she read it, she was like, "Wow, okay, maybe you should see
Yeah.
something." No, but it was a very dark story, and
Mm.
that was one of the early stories I remember writing. I remember by my senior year writing, I wanted to tell a story about a group of scientists who made the first propulsion system that could go the speed of light. That was a story that I kind of came up with when I, you know, and that was a very optimistic, positive, cool story, you know. And this idea of like, if they could create this ship that could go this drive system, then could that open us up so we can travel to other stars and travel to other, you know, see other things. So that was a fun story. That was one that that was probably the first script I ever tried to write was when I was 17. And then I really didn't do much with it until I had some stories that I played around with, and I did them in different visual mediums. I tried to play around with like comic book style stuff or illustrated stories. But it was the LA riots in 1992, the Rodney King situation that and having had kind of a unique view of race, I decided to write a screenplay about a white reporter who goes and lives in the inner city after a big riot kind of situation, like what happened with that. And it was nothing sci-fi about it at all. It was just a straight up social discussion. And I wrote that script and I submitted it to an agent, and the agent took me on. They liked the script. Now it was sent around Hollywood and people looked at it, but everyone was like, we're not making this movie. They're like, we just survived this riot. We don't want to make a movie that's gonna, you know, that could incite. But it helped people see that I had potential as a writer, which was cool. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. I actually did a little bit of screenwriting development work for a few episodes of Star Trek. One of them would have been produced if there had been an eighth season of Next Generation. I did a story about Worf, and my buddy Ron and I wrote a story about Worf and this idea that there were this cabal of these people in Starfleet that didn't want Worf to become a captain, and they wanted to keep him, right, because he's a Klingon. And it was, and the whole idea was like dealing with this idea of racism and glass ceilings, where it's like, okay, we're happy to have you here, but we're never going to let you be a leader. We're never going to let you be in charge. And we started taking from things that both of our fathers had been through and some of the things that he and I had both seen. And we really wanted to do it as a parable for racism in corporate America. And it was a story about Worf. So we wrote that one, and they canceled the show, but we submitted it and they really liked it. And it's something that was so Gene Roddenberry. It's a total Gene Roddenberry kind of story, you know? So,
Talk about glass ceilings. My dad, who's European, and he said to me, like, if I was taller, I'd get promoted one time.
About himself or about you? Was he
about him? Like he said, if he was taller, he would have been promoted. Just because he was shorter, he didn't get promoted, and he knew that. It was kind of like the thing. But he also, like, talking about myself. So there was a chance for me to actually go to, I guess, level 1, whatever you want, the high tier schools. But somehow, because I was Indian, they wouldn't let me go through. But I ticked all the boxes, which was like from a middle lower family and so on, and from a town and socio-economical lower township, everything. And then it was suddenly like my dad said, they just turned you down because you're Indian. And I was like, imagine what my future would have been if that was that trajectory. And I think that's why, like, a lot of times now I just don't think about what ifs anymore, because I mean there's always all sorts of roadblocks people put. But I think the Worf story, I was kind of wondering, didn't they Terry Matalas do something similar to that right now in third season of Picard with Worf?
Not that I know of. I mean, Worf has obviously been through lots of stuff. He's been an ambassador. He's done all kinds of things, right? I think season 3 of Picard, Worf was pretty much he was working undercover, right? He was he was working undercover, and he was trying to figure out what was going. I think he was really trying to figure out what was going on with the changelings, right? And the changelings being back and all that. So that was But
I think I love the third season of Picard is the only true Roddenberry that I've had.
Oh well, that's the only Star Trek that has actually felt like Star Trek since probably some aspects of Enterprise. I mean, it's like I just, for me, I don't feel like they've been making Star Trek, and I just don't get it, and I'm not, I'm not the audience, so that's fine. You know, people who like it, cool. You know, but it's just not for me. You know, so I'm not. And it's funny because I'm not somebody who is not against the idea of reboots. I really dug the Battlestar Galactica reboot. I thought it was awesome.
It was amazing.
You know, I actually had no problem with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the changes that happened there. I didn't have any problem with Star Trek: The Next Generation. There were a lot of people who were naysayers early on in Next Generation. I totally was open-minded and interested. I liked Deep Space Nine when it happened. I thought it was great. But I gotta be honest, I kind of think that like from Voyager on, Voyager started getting a little iffy for me. Well, more than a little iffy. You know, but it was just a little Voyager to me, I called it Next Generation light. It felt a little light, you know, and it didn't feel, it felt that at that point it was like product. It was like, you know, you know what I mean? It's like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. They both were stories that needed to be told. They were awesome. And then by the time we got to, you know, Voyager and Enterprise, it was like, well, we got to keep some Star Trek on here. You know, what are we going to do? We got to keep making some Star Trek, you know? And so by the time we got down to the end of Enterprise, I was like, you know, it's a good idea. Let's just take a break. You guys need to just stop because we're losing ideas. We're losing momentum. And so actually when the idea came up that J.J. Abrams was going to reboot it, I was like, cool. I think that's actually what it needs. It needs to get rebooted, you know? And then, but then when I saw what they did, I was like, what is this? You know, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, it was an absolute disaster to me. It just wasn't, I'm sorry, we're going off on a tangent, but
but I mean, it kind of feels like, you know, they're not showing respect to what the show's about, and which is why you know, I think that's like, I think indie creators, because they're hungry to create, to tell their story, have a greater chance now to be creative. Especially with Kickstarter, with Indiegogo and other funding sites, crowdfunding sites. There's so many, you know, opportunities for indie filmmakers to be out here to find an audience, you know, and to find backers and stuff, which is what I love. I mean, as myself as a comic book writer, you know, being able to tell stories and have somebody, you know, be out there, you know, once you've made it, you know, getting it ready, put out there, to have people out in the, you know, in the ether of crowdfunding say, okay, yeah, I'll back that. And I think this is why I you know, I'm very supportive of anything that's been done by crowdfunding. Or anybody who's out there.
The thing is interesting, like our crowdfunding campaign right now, you know, we're over 20% funded. We've got a long way to go, but I'll tell you, the average Kickstarter, like there have only been 0.67% of Kickstarters out of 80,000+ projects have gotten as far as ours has. I mean, so like being at over 120,000, that's like a real accomplishment. And what that says to me is it proves that this has got some momentum and some interest, you know? So now what we're going to do, we have several, you know, new programs, new benefits, things we're going to be putting out in the next few days that I think will energize the fandom, and I think we'll still put it over the top. We've got a long way to go, but we're being smart. We're learning from it. I think we really saturated the 1999 community with lots of ads, lots of stuff. We wanted to back off a little bit, give them a breather. This last, you know, 10 days or so, we're going to hit them hard. We had some cool stuff coming, you know. So
I mean, we did a Kickstarter, and I threw everything at it, and I learned from that, just like yourself. There's a different way of doing things. But I mean, I think that's a learning curve. I think
it's a huge learning curve. Yeah, we learned so much in the last couple of weeks about, you know, how to do this and how to best promote it and all that stuff. So it's cool. It's all good. You know, I'm very, very humbled and very proud that I have people from all around the world reaching out to me saying, I'm so excited that you're doing this. I'm so excited to hear this, you know, and so one way or another, I'm getting this made, you know, it's going to get made. So it's inevitable. So,
I just had a thought, like, you know, you could sign photos and send them out, because the reason for that is, like, it doesn't cost that much to just mail something out. Whereas if you like comics, it costs about $20 to mail a comic book out. But if you're sending out a photo, you know, it's kind of, I mean, that's just my head. I'm always thinking about how we make
yeah,
things.
no.
Easier.
What we're doing. We're actually going to be releasing an original blueprint of the Eagle that's
Awesome.
done by one of the Star Trek artists, and then
amazing.
John Eves, who designed the Enterprise E, and he's a great prolific Star Trek artist. John's going to do a print of the Eagle, and he's creating his own, and we're doing that, and we're going to make that one of the goals as well. So all that stuff's going to be happening in the coming days. It'll be great. We're yeah, some cool stuff happening. And then Nick Tate, who played Alan in the show, he's actually going to do a big call to arms video for us that we're going to put out in fandom. So, you know, remember the Kickstarters that got funded in minutes, right? I mean, we just have to get the word out. It's all good.
Yeah.
I think we've got enough momentum that when people go look at it, they'll go, wow, that's actually pretty good. How do we help them finish this? So it's good.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through the entire Eagle has landed in a little bit.
Okay.
But let's I was going to get you to go through each aspect, so that way we can, people can see exactly what it is. Now, Oceanus and Parallel Man.
Mm-hmm.
I love I remember watching Oceanus and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this could happen, really could happen. And and it was like, it was just crazy. The whole concept of it felt so real.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about bringing plausibility and scientific plausibility to your storytelling. Tell me a bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Anybody can make stuff up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna tell a story briefly that some people might find strange, but here's the thing. I was a kid, and when I saw Star Wars, obviously, I think I was in 5th grade, and I saw that movie, and I remember by the time I was kind of interested. I was like, well, as I said, I was a science kid, right? So I knew something about. Obviously, we know a lot more about space than we did in the 1970s, but they knew quite a bit. And I would read these things and everything. So I was super excited for Star Wars because I was like, where is this? What is it? When is this? What happens, right? And I remember sitting in the theater, and the first moment I saw a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was like, wait, what? It's like that immediately kind of was like, wait, what? I'm like, but those are humans, and like they speak English, and they're, and I was like, why? Oh, I was kind of bummed immediately because I was like, I was hoping it was a story about our future, right? That's what I was hoping. But okay, fine, I'll go with this. But the science kid in me was watching Star Wars. And I was like, well, this is cool. It's fine. We're on this planet, and and Tatooine seemed really cool and interesting. But then they got to the cantina. And I remember watching that, and I was going, wait a minute. Okay, so you got all these different species. So like, how are they all breathe the same atmosphere, and they all can handle the same gravity? And they all want to hang out in a bar, you know what I mean, right? And it was really weird for me. I had a really hard time because of knowing the science. I was like, I don't get, like, this couldn't happen in real life. You wouldn't have all those different species being able to be in the same. The reason why they look the way they do and they're different is because they would have evolved in different environments and all this stuff, right? So how would they all be able to just all be here, right? Now people would say, come on, man, it's just a movie. And you know what? It was just a movie, and I enjoyed it, and I liked it. But that was the kind of thing that made me think as a child. I was like, could you make a movie where you actually look at the science of things and you say, I'm going to tell a story, but I'm going to force myself to be fit in these parameters. And my parameters are plausible science to the limits of whatever our knowledge are, plausible technology within the idea of what could be projected or what might be able to happen, right? So we're not going to just go make up artificial gravity, for example, right? Like, how does artificial gravity work? What does that? Now Star Trek's super good, at least used to be really, really good at making up its own sort of physics, with its terminology, the technobab, right? I mean, LeVar Burton, God love him, he was so good at just rattling this stuff off, and you're like, yep, bro, yeah, I believe everything he's saying. I completely get it, right? But so Star Trek was pretty good at making up its own parameters of it. But if you look at like some of these other stories, Star Wars, I call it space fantasy at the end of the day. Right? because it's fantasy. It's still, and just because it has some robots and some spaceships doesn't mean the spaceships could really fly. It doesn't mean they couldn't actually. There's no physical means for those ships to fly the way they do. They look cool, like an X-wing, for example. There's no thrusters on the X-wing to make it move in those positions, and they fly like airplanes, right? Now, again, super cool. I'm not putting it down. Love it, right? But I was thinking, like, how would a spaceship really fly in a space battle? When you look at spaceships, they first off, they're not airplanes. They have these thrusters on them that fire, and then they'll fire and change direction. And then another thruster will fire to stop your rotation or change your it's pitch, roll, yaw, all these different things. And it's actually really interesting. And so I've thought, man, what if we limit ourselves more? And so I've got what I call my 85% rule with most of my stories. Parallel Man's not meant to be real. That's what I call a techno fantasy, right? Yeah. It's a fantasy because we're chopping universes and all that stuff. But something like Oceanus and my movie Persephone and things like that, I'm using this rule of saying we got to get this like 85% plausible, and then leave ourselves like room for about 15% speculation, 15% fun, you know, because audiences don't want to see a documentary. They don't want to see boring. They want to have fun. They want to see something that's awesome and cool. So that's why if you made it 100%, then as far as I'm concerned, at that point you're making a documentary, you know? Yeah. But so this 85% rule is a big thing for me because that's the basis. So when I do something like Oceanus, I really looked at like, well, how would you build an underwater city, and what kind of vessels could you have, and how deep, you know? And one of the things we did with Oceanus, like with the submarine, we were actually limited in the shape we could build, you know, everything. So I created something that was more of sort of this underwater race car. But then you've got issues of pressure and stuff. So, you know, we don't go into it in the story, but our operating principle was that at this point in the future, you have ceramics, clear ceramics, and you have transparent aluminum, which are things that are really happening. And I was like, well, if you have shapes like that and stuff, and these things are able to maintain this tensile strength, you might be able to have different shaped craft underwater than what you normally have you know what I mean, with a typical submersible. So that was part of our thing. You know, it's like we've got radio underwater, which is not something that can really happen, but we were playing around with the idea of quantum entanglement, lets the ships talk to each other, you know, all kinds of cool things like that when we get into more of the Oceanus feature films and TV shows, as we develop that, you're going to get to see some of the science of this and really get into what would it be like to live underwater, and how dangerous would it be, and how would they do it. So that's really important. So
I'm just going to bring this up so people can actually see what the ship looks like underwater. Are you able to see that?
It's a good shot.
Okay, so here we go. Yeah, so let me bring this up really large. So I'm going to play it without any sound in the background so we can see how amazing that looks. Take us through this.
Well, I mean, that's the Oceanus base back there behind them, and then this is the submersible. I call it an aqua shuttle, which is an homage to something from the Star Trek cartoon. Actually, they had something called an aqua shuttle in that show that I thought was so cool in the cartoon. And so the aqua shuttles, they're these sort of advanced underwater, hot rods that basically use these magnetic drive systems to squirt the suck in seawater and squirt it out, you know, as opposed to using screws and typical systems, you know, and everything. So that's part of how these things are able to travel underwater at these high speeds and everything. So, and then we built this set. Actually, it was constructed up in Vancouver, and then we shipped it down to Los Angeles, and then we filmed on a soundstage with a bunch of blue screens and and lighting effects. And everything you're seeing we did with CG, and then we played around with all kinds of different cool lighting effects and stuff. You're going to see coming up in a minute, like it looks like he's literally underwater. And the way we did it was we had these cool Mylar reflectors, and we shined lights into them and shook the reflector, and it gave the shimmering effect. They're underwater, right? So then when you composite that with the other background elements and you overlap flares and stuff, it really starts to come together and become something really believable, you know. So that's a big part of what I was trying to do here, was create something that had a cool look and feel to it, you know. Yeah.
Did you like with the actual set there? Did you create everything, or how much of it did you actually like say, okay, we can use
Well,
this
one
and
of the
that'll work
things was
here? And
I really believe in practical sets, as much practical as you can, because now this was before, obviously, we did this before LED volume. Now I might have, at this point, I would wrap this stage, wrap this set with LED volume, and pre-build the imagery and then project it on the LED screens, right? But this was before that, so this was all lots and lots and lots of compositing work to do this, right? Every single shot. But the actual set, physical set, we designed and built that. I led the design team
awesome
on it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That's what really got me. That's what really got me about this, is that fact that it was so practical. And you know, I mean, you've got your CGI, that's great, but the actual fact that they're actually in that place around them, that's real. And yeah, I was just like amazed at that. I was like, this is really cool. It's got this real beautiful blend, you know, what you can do. And
you know, this is also like an homage for me. Like I really like movies like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where there was some beauty to the visual effects and the sets, and there was a, you know, everything. It's like nowadays I feel like everything's moving so fast, and we're always trying to move through it, and like you can't enjoy visual effects. You can't, like, I don't, half the times in some of these shows I don't even know what the ships look like. They move so fast, right? And I'm just like, you know, and I feel like a lot of it's almost like a video game influence or something, you know, whereas this, I was really trying to make more cinematic and more motion picture like, you know, that was my goal. So
yeah. Well, guys, make sure you guys check this out. This is, I'll put the link in and then we'll head over to Parallel soon. But I mean, yeah, because I don't want to give away any more of the plot, because that's such a great film, great short film to watch.
Oh, thank you very much.
This is just part one, isn't it?
Yeah, well, here's the sad part is we actually I wrote several versions of the screenplay to kind of continue this into a full film. And then the problem was with the Hollywood, it's like, well, those actors aren't big enough names. You got to recast it. That's what I started hearing, which really frustrated me, because the actors were awesome in this. They were absolutely great. The other thing that was really frustrating is that we weren't able to really, you know, move it along to where I wanted it. And so I have a version of it, a new version of it that I started developing earlier this year. That was, you know, so I've written like 3 or 4 different screenplays of it. I've done multiple TV Bibles for a TV series of this. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to reboot it as a movie. And you know, I'm sorry.
It's a feature-length, 90-minute
feature-length movie, yeah, in theaters. We actually have been, we're working with a European company that actually has a lot of interest in turning it into a big feature. And Lance Reddick, who, you know, the actor Lance, he passed away earlier this year. It was devastating, because Lance and I were actually working together developing Oceanus feature with him as a lead. So it was, we were developing it with him as the lead, and we were going to bring in Gerard Butler to play sort of the nemesis to his character. So, but a really great treatment came out of that. And I think this treatment nailed the premise, and I think it's going to be great for new audiences. Audiences who have seen the short will go, okay, I see enough in this that I understand what it is that you were trying to do. I get it. And then a completely new audience could be, you know, pulled into it. So we'll see what happens, you know, but I'm definitely, the project will get finished and turned into something someday. And, you know, because it's a heck of a story. I mean, the whole idea for me was, what would happen if you were living underwater? And then suddenly that's the only choice you have, is to live underwater. Right. It's like, so, literally like the underwater civilization becomes the civilization on Earth. That's the basic premise of it. Just to, you know, and then what happens to the people living there, and what do they, you know, that kind of thing. So
like, I mean, it kind of feels like a reverse water world, because there's no land, and now you just got, you know, instead of being able, because you can't live above the water, so you're stuck underneath.
Yeah, there's something that occurs that makes it impossible to live above the surface. It's at least for a long time. And so the question is, you know, once that happens, what happens to the people who are living underwater, and how do they survive? And then also any other factions or groups of people who live underwater, They're fighting over the resources and everything down there. There's a whole thing. It's a dark premise, but I think it's one that could challenge us and talk a lot about what it is to be human right now. That's what I see the story being. So
Yeah.
that's what
do you get along, or do you just, like, it's the same old thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, there's always somebody wants something that you have, and how far will they go to get it?
They have to figure it out. They have to figure it out, because it's like there's only so many of us left, and if there's only so many of us left, we have to do better. We have to change.
Yeah.
And that's what I see that story. Honestly, I would be very happy about just doing a story about an underwater city. Right. I think that'd be just fine. I think that the problem is that when you're dealing with Hollywood and Hollywood financiers, it's like, well, yeah, but where's the hook? Where's the meat of this thing? Where's the stuff that I can chew on? It's like, underwater city, that's not a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
the same idea. It's the same idea. The actor isn't well known enough, or they're not,
right.
You know, actress isn't well known enough.
They call it major elements. It needs major elements. That's the thing. So.
What's going to make people, you know, come to see it?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the other things I was thinking, like, I mean, a lot of times now, people just want to see a good story. Doesn't matter who's in it.
Right.
You know, if it's a good story, it'll sell itself.
Well, yeah, but you got to.
Then again,
the problem is you got to fund it.
That's the
problem
other part.
is that you're not going to be able to fund that good story unless you have the elements that they're interested in and believe in. Otherwise, they won't give you the money for it. That's the problem. And so even you know, even with like my film Persephone, we've been struggling because they want this really small number of A-list actors to be, you know, in your film. And if you don't have one of those actors, so then the problem is now everybody's after those same actors. So it's just it makes it almost untenable. And I think that's part of why we're having writers' strikes and SAG strikes and things like that, because it's the industry is becoming bankrupt. It just makes no sense the way that it makes no sense that I could make something as great as that short film and not have studios going, let's go do this. Let's go make. That's exactly what we thought we had. And we have fans all around the world who love that show, love it. And they're like, well, where's more of this? And I'm like, I want to make more too. I don't, you know, it's like, you know, I sat down with Netflix and showed it to them and they're just like yawning. I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? It just made no sense to me. So I think one thing is, if I could go back, I would have figured out how to shoot another week and a half and make that into a full film instead of just, because I think the problem was we thought we can make a short and that short will get interest and we can go and get it done. And I think we would be much better if we just made the whole movie. I think it'd be a completely different world if I just figured out how to just make the thing, you know?
Because I think, like, I guess it's like getting having a product and then having a product to show, you know, and it's like at the moment, all they want is product. You know, they don't want you to come up with an idea. They just want you to have you know, have it. Here it is. You know, here's my pizza or my burger. You know, not like this is what you do to get a burger made, kind of thing. I don't know. It just kind of feels, you know, but I think because of strikes, it might actually be better for indie creators.
Right? No question. In my mind, I think it actually is going to help. I really do. I think it's going to help. Yeah, for sure.
Because there's lack of, you know, there's what's that, 100 days lack of product. So now they'll be like, which product? But also, you know, they're finding out that people want good product. And at the end, you know, as we say, product being what people view, but entertainment, they want good entertainment and great stories.
No question. I mean,
you know, if you don't get it where it's regularly going to come from, they're going to go where they can find it. And I find that's where indie creatives are really, you know, raising the bar, to be honest, I think, because, you know, like crowdfunding, I said earlier, crowdfunding's allowing really great stuff to come. I've actually just saw Jason Howden, who's a New Zealand film creator, who did what's that, Guns Akimbo, also Deathgasm, horror movie writer, right?
Oh sure, yeah.
And so
is he in Australia or New Zealand?
He's a Kiwi. He's New Zealand.
He's New Zealand.
So,
okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, so he's just put up.
I've seen his
too. Yeah. So I mean, that's a whole different thing. I mean, you know, it's a different genre. So it's horror. So, but what I love is that it's allowing, you know, people just having their own vision, you know, to do something, and I appreciate that. I think, you know, and I'm supportive of that. And I think more people should be supportive of that. If if you're out here going, I don't like this because they're so, this and that, I just can't, well, then get out here and support people on crowdfunding.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You got no excuse and to complain.
Yeah.
If you're complaining, then do something to help other creatives.
More. Yeah.
Tell us about we mentioned a bit about Parallel Man earlier, so let's go through that for a bit, because I just love I love manga and anime, and I love animation. I was watching a couple last night, and I enjoy that's because I come from I'm doing comics and stuff like that. I love the let me find something really different. Actually, it might just go from this over here, because that's kind of a really cool setup.
Okay.
Or this, because watch a little bit and we'll get you to talk about this. This is Parallel Man.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing. I actually was interested in parallel universes since I first saw I think it was Mirror Mirror on the original Star Trek.
Okay.
And so I've been thinking about the kinds of parallel universes for decades, and we did this before the whole advent of the whole parallel universe thing that's been going on with Marvel and all the other stuff. It's like I've always thought it was fascinating, the idea. And so I wanted to tell a story about a totalitarian regime that developed the ability to travel across the multiverse, and then using that ability, they basically become villains. It's actually the United States that becomes the villains in this version. And this agent of that group, he starts to realize that how corrupt and evil the regime is, and he wants to take them down. And he starts aligning with a version of himself from our universe in this. And they basically assimilate different versions of Earth, in other universes, and ours was the next one they target. So this is actually him from another reality coming over to ours, finds this component that's been stored in our universe, hidden, and he there's a big chase that happens and stuff like that. I will send you, just for the fun of it, there's a graphic novel that we did of this. Well, actually a 7-issue comic book series. Wow. and a big graphic novel that turned out great, that was really, really cool, that tells this whole story. So you'll have to read it. I'll send you a PDF of it, so yeah.
We actually, starting next Friday, we actually started doing a Huey's Review comic books show. Okay. And so I'll get one of the guys. I'll read it to myself.
Is this live on YouTube right now? Is this live on YouTube, this channel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just playing it off dust there, but I want to talk.
Oh no, I meant your show right now.
Yeah, we're live.
Yeah, on YouTube. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I was going to say is what I loved about it was the quality of the animation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That was the first
thing. I took it really, really seriously. I mean, all the design work, all the whole thing. It's like I wanted the backgrounds, for example, to feel like a painting, as opposed to, I wanted a very organic look and feel to this that didn't feel overly, I wanted it to feel human and organic and not so technical.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of this for me. It reminded me of some of the animations I used to see in the 70s when I was a kid. And I was thinking, how can I update that 70s sort of look and feel with modern animation and techniques and stuff? So that's how we got to this. So.
I'm into parallel worlds, and just for the, I remember sometimes a few years back, I was having a dream, and I was in different, in my dream, I was in different universes.
Mm-hmm,
I was in London, in the 1800s, and then I was in the future, and there's ships flying around, and balloons and stuff, and then I'm back and now thing, and I was like, that's just that idea of that. It's like time travel, right?
It's fascinating. It's super fascinating. Yeah. It really is, So, yeah, no, I definitely think there's something to. Well, here's the thing: there could be many different types of parallel universes and parallel worlds, So the whole idea is to, I just wanted to tell a story that felt like it was rooted and interesting in the parallel universe milieu. That was the whole idea. So we're currently developing a feature of this with Polygon Pictures out of Tokyo.
I was just going to ask about that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's what we're working on right now, is getting that figured out. So I'm actually I broke the screenplay this year. So I kind of took the graphic novel, and my writing partner and I kind of rethought it and modernized it, and we were really happy with it, and Polygon likes it. So right after the first of the year, I'm going to start writing that script, and then we'll go into active development, figuring it all out and getting it together. So, you know, it probably won't be something we'll get to see for a couple of years, obviously, because animation takes a while, but we hope to have something greenlit by the end of next year and funded.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, something like, the fact that it's such a, great story, great work on it. Like, I mean, this is from when? Like, when did you actually make this?
Oh, I actually made that. It was 2014, 15. Yeah. So it's been around a while. We were way ahead of our time. So I was here. You're ahead of your time. It's like, yeah.
1.6 million views, just on this site. I mean, I'm not sure, where else you've released it, but on Dust itself, it's 1.6 million views.
Yeah, and we've got very good reviews too. People really like it. So, yeah, the comments are great. So, yeah, we'll do something more with it. It's coming.
Okay, so next up, let's spend the next 10 minutes talking about the Kickstarter, and then we'll finish off with what I call words of wisdom, or the last words.
Okay.
And that'll be us for today. But
yeah. So, the Kickstarter. So I'm going to do a documentary specifically about this Eagle spacecraft, and the reason why is I think it transcends Space 1999. I think it's bigger than that. I think it's there are millions of people around the world that love this ship, and I think there's more love for this specific spaceship than almost any in science fiction. And there are people who collect it and build it and talk about it and do art of it and animations of it. And there's a guy who built a quarter scale one in his backyard in Denmark. There's all kinds of really cool stuff around it. And the reason why I believe, this is resonating with so many people and has endured for so long is because people actually were into, going to the moon. The whole idea that they thought there was a future that was going to happen, and that future didn't happen. And so because that future didn't happen, right, we held on to this iconic spaceship as a sort of an aspect of that dream that was unfulfilled. And so that's the story I want to tell about this. Yeah.
Now, you got a whole bunch of people that's from the actual show involved with this.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about them, or would you rather I play the video for this?
Oh, it's up to you. I mean, I think the video, it's up to you. You do whatever you think is the best way.
How long's the video?
It's about 3 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. We'll do that, and then I'll get you to talk about it.
Hi there, this is Nick Tate. I'm super excited to be part of the new documentary, The Eagle Has Landed. An exclusive look starts now.
50 years ago, an icon was born. The Eagle transporter is one of the greatest sci-fi spacecraft ever conceived. To this day, the design provokes an intense devotion among countless fans around the world. The question is, why? I'm writer-director Jeffrey Morris. I've been enamored with the Eagle since I first saw it in the TV series Space 1999 back in 1975. As a child who followed the Apollo program, the Eagle felt like a direct descendant of NASA's lunar module. Those transformative moon missions left an indelible impact on a generation, as did the Eagle in Space 1999. Over the years, I've discovered that I'm just one of millions of fans who has an affection for the Eagle and a nostalgia for a future we never achieved. So I'm shooting a feature documentary about the origins of this beloved ship, while also exploring its ongoing cultural impact. And I'm inviting you to join me. I'll be speaking with the Eagle's designer, visual effects wizard Brian Johnson. I'll also chat with Nick Tate, the actor who played legendary pilot Captain Alan Carter. It's going to be an epic journey as I travel around the globe to speak with eagle aficionados and luminaries from the worlds of science and science fiction. As for myself, the visionary world building in Space 1999 blew my mind. It ultimately inspired me to become a filmmaker and production designer. I'm the creator of hard sci-fi projects such as the forthcoming deep space adventure Persephone, the apocalyptic underwater thriller Oceanus, and the universe-hopping techno-fantasy Parallel Man. Now I'm bringing all of my experience and passion to the creation of this documentary. The good news is we've already begun production. We self-financed a shoot in Louisville, Kentucky at Wonderfest, where I spoke with lifelong Eagle fans from around the country. They shared passionate stories about the iconic vessel and the aspects that make it so memorable. Then I traveled to Colorado, where I interviewed Kevin J. Anderson, the best-selling author of books set in the Dune, Star Wars, and X-Files universes. He also happens to be a huge fan of Space 1999. Recently, Kevin and I co-authored the novelization of my film Persephone. We had a blast discussing our mutual love of the Eagle and what it represents. Yet, there's still plenty left to do. I have to hire production crews at locations around the world. I also need to create visual effects and music. And of course, it all has to be edited together at a level that will rival any award-winning documentary. Now I'm asking for your assistance in completing the voyage. Check out our Kickstarter. There are tons of great rewards and even a couple of awesome stretch goals. The future began 50 years ago, and its time is now. Become a supporter of The Eagle Has Landed.
Do you want to take us through some of the tiers here?
You mean as far as the support? Yeah, I mean, you know, we're giving away. I mean, well, you know, we obviously want people to fund these different levels, but I mean, we've got a lot of cool things. I mean, bottom line is we're going to have, you know, a digital access. We're going to have a Blu-ray, you know, 4K UHD Blu-ray. We've got a different versions of the Eagle. You can get. We can tell your story. You can have dinner with one of the, you know, with the creator Brian Johnson or with the actor Nick Tate. We've got some really cool stuff that we've come up with for it. You know, yeah. So it's we think it's cool. I mean, it's like it's a chance to see, you know what people basically. Yeah, so look at that. We've got 3 of those. Yeah, so you know it's a lot. There's a lot of cool, you know, stuff we've tried to do and create here for this. So yeah,
I didn't realize. Are they still selling this, or this is something?
Oh my gosh, they're selling tons of them. Oh yeah.
Is this with this one here? Is this something specifically made for you, or is it?
No, that's the existing kit that people pay, and it's worth hundreds of dollars. People spend $300-400 for that. You know, so obviously we have it marked to a level where it allows us to actually, you know, become something that funds us, helps us fund it. So, but if you scroll down a little further, we've got a special edition of it. Yeah, and it's there right there. So it's a special edition one that's specifically designed and branded around my company and our initiatives and stuff, which is kind of cool. So
let me just bring that one up. Zoom in there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's a special edition. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, which is fun. Yeah. So yeah. So we've got some cool stuff there that we think we put together for it, and we're excited, you know. So, but you can see all about. I mean, obviously, this is a big story we want to tell, and we're traveling all different parts of the world, and there's all kinds of things we're trying to do here to pull it off. So, yeah,
it's so cool. All right, guys, you can check that out on. I've got the link there that you can view. But we'll finish off here. Oh, before we go, I just wanted to talk about the book. I'm going to let you say it. Yeah, I'm going to have trouble with that.
Persephone,
right?
Yeah, Persephone. Yeah.
So, where can they find the book? Like,
it's not. We're holding off until the film is made. You know, so it's right. There will be there's going to be Kevin Anderson is going to do a Kickstarter for the book. Right. and that's going to be launching in about a month. So that'll be, because I got, this is the book right here that he and I did. So it's a really cool book. So we're gonna be releasing that via the Kickstarter, and the version of the book is going to be very special in that it's a prototype of the story based on an early draft of the script. The current draft of the script is very different. So if you get that, you'll get it kind of access to a taste of the world, but not the final movie. It's pretty cool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated that. I mean, it's just, I love going on these journeys with our guests, like yourself, because it's just, I think a lot of times, we don't know a person's journey. We just see the final work, and we don't, we think this is it. It's like, it's a product. And it's like, but then you see what the journey, I think, has brought you this far to this. And now we get to see you going further on after this as well, because you got the films coming out, and then to see Persephone as a book, and then also as a film. I just, is it, because it's Oceanus that's going to be a TV series, right?
Boy, I sure hope so. We'll see what happens. I mean, right now we're targeting it to be a film, but I think there's all kinds of, I think once the Eagle has landed happens, I think it's going to open some doors for us to finally start to figure out what we can do with these things and turn them into something. These are original IPs. They're very well realized. We've got so much material we've created for each one. We just need somebody to give us a shot. That's what we're looking for, there's been a lot of reticence in Hollywood. I don't think it's because of the quality of the package. It just has to do with, who's in it, and that sort of thing. So if we can either find a way to do it independently or, get a voice in this place where people finally kind of start to take us seriously. The sad thing is I'm not the only one in this position. I know some very talented filmmakers who have made great short films and created content and even done independent features, and we're trying to get things moving. They couldn't do it. Super talented. It's just the system. It's a hard system. It really is.
It's that whole reboot thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's because they want to use existing IPs. It's always about, taking existing IP, hopefully something people know, something people remember, and then, putting a new spin on it. But then they think they've got the safety of having an existing audience, if that makes sense. So that's probably something like this new movie, The Creator. I kind of want to go see that because I want to support the idea that there's an original movie with original ideas instead of it being a reboot or a remake kind of thing.
I think, like I mentioned earlier, people are hungry for good stories, and
they are.
when we see so many reboots and they just dropping the ball, it's it turns people off the franchise itself. As we watch Star Wars, and now with Star Trek, I think people are hungry for. I know I am hungry for good TV. That's why I'm going backwards now, watching the older stuff, because
absolutely.
I missed the good stuff, so I'm going to go back to the old stuff. But in finishing, I'll give you this center stage. Basically, it's the last words. Where you have 3 to 5 minutes to say whatever you want, and we'll put you on full screen, and then you can take it away.
Well, first off, I want to thank you for giving me a shot here to tell my story. I've had very few people who have actually, it's one thing to talk about the content that you're doing right now, and it's another thing to have someone say, tell me about you, tell me about your childhood, tell me about, how did you get to be this guy now? So that was that was very, very cool. It's a real honor. Thank you. But I also I guess the thing I'd like to say to anybody who's wanting to create something or do it, you have to just follow through. You have to don't just talk about it. You have to figure it out, and you have to do it. You have to find a way, whether it's through friends, family, whatever, you've got to find a way to get your vision put together. And you have to, the world needs us. It needs people to try to create things and create new ideas and to do it. And I think people would be surprised how many of them are creators. Actually, there's a big difference living in the world as a creator versus a consumer, and it's not that hard to consume. It's not that hard to critique, but it's very, very difficult to create, and I think more of us have the capability than we think. So my only suggestion is, if you think you have the potential to be a creator, do it. Make stuff. We'd be a better world if we had more creators and less consumers, Not that there's anything wrong with consuming, but you know, I think being a creator and a thinker and originator is there's something very special, and I think each of us have the seeds of that in us. Whether it's it doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of storytelling; it could be any type of art, or you know, you know, so many different approaches and vocations. But try to create, try to find a way to make a mark on this world, a positive mark on this world, you know, through your own hand, your own means. That would be my final word. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate, you know, taking time from, you know, I know creatives are like, you know, I could be doing something, you know, and stuff, and oh, you know, you come up with a thought in the middle of something, and but you're like, you know, thank you for your amazing time and sharing your life with us. And
Sure.
you know, I just hope, you know, all goes well, and more people, you know, in the last 10 days, as you said, like, you know, we'll get the word out, we'll start blasting it as much as possible, and because I think, you know, you know, more creative stuff the better, more good stuff the better. I think.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. So I agree. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Okay. All right,
guys. Ka kite anō. See you next time. We've got another interview later on this afternoon in New Zealand time. So everybody else on the Northern Hemisphere is probably sleeping. But we've got a friend of mine who's kind of come on and talk about his podcast where he just interviews local artists and yeah, A-list artists and so forth. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jeffrey, and everybody else. Go support The Eagle Has Landed. All right.
Thank you.
Bye for now.